Don Lemon is being put on notice by the DOJ after he documented a group of anti-ICE protesters in St. Paul, Minnesota, who entered a church on Sunday morning and loudly interrupted the service.
Take a look at this video from the service.
Renee Good! Renee Good! Don't shoot! Don't shoot!
The protesters were reportedly under the impression that the church's pastor was working with federal immigration enforcement. Lemon, for his part, said he had no affiliations with the protesters and was simply trying to report on the latest developments in Minnesota following the shooting death of Renee Good nearly 2 weeks ago. Here's part of the video from the protest.
So the protesters are confronting church members and leaders. They have stopped the service. A lot of people, a number of people have left. There are some who are still sitting here. So right now it's kind of mayhem in here. And there are some folks here who are praying. We're here just chronicling and reporting. We're not part of the activists, but we're here just reporting on them.
Lemon's denying any affiliation. He didn't just stop, that didn't stop the DOJ from identifying him as one of the agitators.
Harmeet Dillon, the Justice Department's Assistant Attorney General for Civil Rights, confirmed on X that the FBI had been activated to investigate the incident and said this on Benny Johnson's podcast following the incident.
We have a presumption of innocence in this country, so I want to preserve my ethical duties here. But let me just say that, he's a journalist. He was a journalist. I don't know what he is now, but journalism is not a badge or a shield that protects you from criminal consequences when you are part of a crime. And I think the videos show how close he was to these folks.
Okay, well, guess what? When you're a journalist or when you are a reporter, you get close to the action. So
okay,
I
but
don't.
You can't trespass.
No, he didn't trespass. He
What do you
video
mean
recorded.
trespass?
He video recorded. Church is an open forum, like where you can come pray. It's open for everyone. He went in there with a camera and recorded and said, "As I'm seeing protesters are doing this," you heard his voice explaining play-by-play, like a sports announcer, like Dick Vitale, what was happening in there. So I don't understand why people would say that he's part of the protest. Did you see him with a sign?
I don't know whether he was part of the protest or not, but he was not. Well, but you can't be recording, like, you can't, in church, you can sit in the pews and listen to the preacher.
So no one ever records church? No one ever goes in there with a camera? I've seen cameras in my church.
Okay, I don't know whether he was...
This is not against the law to record church.
Okay, it was against the... Okay, what about the protesters?
The protesters did their own thing. He said he followed a group. He was already in Minnesota. He followed a group
what are they doing?
to where they were going. To
what
the
are
protest.
they even doing?
Okay, let me break it down.
Why is this church responsible for
Let's go.
Renee Good?
I'm glad you asked that. So Pastor David Easterwood, he's allegedly serving as the ICE field director in Minnesota, right? He would be the field director of an entire ICE running organization, and he's also a pastor of this huge church. Okay. And so people are there saying, okay, well, excuse me, sir, how is the same person preaching the good word of the law, Christian man, also the field director for ICE here, and you've seen the indications, but you're not saying that this is a terrible thing that we've seen a woman die. You're not preaching the good word in that way. If you understand the Bible, Leviticus 19:13, love the foreigner as you love yourself.
Those people,
why is he not preaching that?
Have no right to educate him on his faith or
but also maybe you shouldn't be a pastor if you preach loving thy foreign as you love yourself.
Protesters, if they're still using the hands up, don't shoot slogan, which is false and a lie. That's from Michael Brown Ferguson. It has been debunked, definitively disproven in a federal DOJ investigation that it is a lie, that he did not have his hands up. That is not true. It is false. So they don't know what they're talking about. They're interrupting they're on private property, interrupting a religious service that has nothing to do with the events in Minneapolis.
The leader of the service
Don Lemon
allegedly
is
has to do
people
everything
in the
to do with ICE.
Service.
The leader of the service has everything to do with ICE, allegedly. And so Christians in Minnesota, there are Christians
outside his home or outside the church. You can't just storm into the church, interrupt it, and shout a slogan that is false.
And there are Christian groups in Minnesota that are actively protesting ICE tactics. They're warning neighbors. They're part of these groups.
Good, and they have every right to do that.
All right, so they're saying, okay, which type of Christian are you? Pastor Easterwood? What type of Christian are you? They're asking, if you look at Matthew 25:35, I welcome a stranger as you welcome me. What type of Christian are you? Which Bible are you studying? Because you can't be the director of ICE and not condemn that we're seeing some of these actions happen, and also be the person that welcomes all foreigners, but also you're leading a church. They're just trying to figure out, how do you know these people weren't...
What right do they, who don't even... I don't know who this group is, that they can say, we're not religious, but we think according to your values.
What makes you say they're not religious?
Well,
what makes you say they're not religious? We don't know who these protesters are.
All I know is that they're shouting a slogan that is false, and they're trespassing on private property.
You think that the Department of Justice should charge Don Lemon? Is that what you're saying, for a video recording on his phone? You think that's appropriate?
I don't know enough information about whether he had knowledge that this was going to happen ahead of time. So he deserves due process, and I support free speech. So we'd have to see. Now, he is confused about this, though, because I saw it. We didn't play this clip, but there's video of him interviewing, I think it was that pastor, some other figure of significance in the church, and saying, but they have, and he's interviewing the person is complaining about these protesters being here, and Don Lemon says, but they have free speech rights, do they not? My dude, they don't have free speech rights to enter private, again, we get very confused here. Free speech, the First Amendment protects you from the government on public property or in your own property from the government stopping you from speaking. Free speech does not mean on someone else's property or in someone else's newspaper or on someone else's social media site that you can say wherever you want and face no consequences from the owner, the property owner, the editor of that thing.
I agree.
I can't barge into your apartment and
I know. I agree with you
Lindsay.
100%. So I just want to know why all the January 6th protesters and rioters were pardoned then. If you agree with that mindset, and if your Department of Homeland Security or Justice Department is now threatening Don Lemon and this small group of protesters, then why the same administration pardoning January 6th rioters and protesters that actually were violent and not just chanting words? You can't defend that.
I
know. I'm just asking.
I haven't defended it.
Okay, so then I wouldn't want them threatening Don Lemon. And surely, this is I'm using it twice, but surely if you look at Nick Shirley as a citizen journalist, then surely you can look at Don Lemon as a citizen journalist who actually understands that he needs to get information and facts. He didn't break in, but you look at him like a citizen journalist and you respect it. You say, oh, his reporting was so good. But Don Lemon is in there telling you, look what's going on. I'm seeing the protest.
So you're saying if Don Lemon was with the J6 people ahead of time and knew they were going to go into the Capitol.
He said he didn't know.
And then he goes into the Capitol with them, and then he's interviewing people. He's interviewing a scared AOC and saying, but they're using their free speech here.
No, if Don
Lemon...
That
would be pretty preposterous, would it not?
If Don Lemon was like any other news agency that has video of that day, I'm sure the reporters and journalists didn't get arrested. There were tons of them down there. Because that's how we have footage in-house here
the footage we have from inside is not from journalists.
No, but we have some from outside from journalists. Yes, we do.
Outside, they're not doing anything
And people were already there.
Outside, the protesters have the right to be
there was a march
just
outside
like the protesters outside the church would have the right to be there.
Look, the same way that Don Lemon was in an area and saw that something may be escalating and followed that, the same way that journalists outside the Capitol could see something was escalating and follow that. Why do you think the journalist is implicated? But why do you think a journalist is implicated for being around some chaos? It doesn't matter if they went all the way inside or to the front door. Like you're recording what could turn into peaceful protest or chaos.
I don't think any journalist did go in, and I think they could have and might have been charged had they done so, right? I mean, journalists are not different. Journalists do not have special different First Amendment or free speech rights or protesting rights or whatever. It's the same as everyone else. Our speech is protected to the same extent. There's no special certificate you have as journalists.
Luckily, these people in Minnesota just said words. They didn't attack anybody. They didn't hit people with objects. Luckily, they said words. So tell Trump to look at the situation and look at January 6th and see how he likes to move forward.
All they should be charged with is trespassing and nothing else. So I'm consistent here.
Up next, Governor Josh Shapiro says former VP Harris vetting team asked questions regarding his connection to Israel. We'll be right back to talk about that after this.